I want to talk about Pluto the cat, also known as the Minx. He lived to be 18 and a half years old. Very loyal pet. Feel very fortunate to have had the time to be with him in his final days. And it was an honor to be his dad, really. I mean, it's an amazing cat. And, you know, I miss him, so I'm going to talk about him a little bit. So, Pluto came to us when I was married to Piper, and psychic like she always was, and her daughter, they contacted me a couple weeks before I left Denver. And unfortunately, he did get sick on the way when I got to Denver, altitude change, and on the way back, he must have gotten a respiratory infection, an upper respiratory infection, and it must have moved into his lungs, because his last couple days he had very labored breathing, and you could hear his little voice in the breath, and it was really sad and hard to deal with. And I was able to bring him back from a really hard altitude change on the way to Denver and fed him water, but I was starting to think when we got down here he wasn't drinking for, I mean, not nearly as much as you need to survive. So a cat can live 2 weeks without food, but only 3 days without water. And he just wasn't taking in enough water in his last 3 days to survive. And I even got an eyedropper and was feeding him a little bit of water, but I didn't want his last memories of me to be force feeding him water, so I didn't do that too much. And it really got to the point where his body had decimated, and he just didn't want to, he couldn't even really walk or anything else. So the last thing we did, the last day of his life, I took him out on a blanket into the yard by where we feed the birds, and we just hung out for a while. And I just took him on a whole tour of the yard and set him up with a little blanket, and he just kind of sat there all day, and he seemed fine. His breathing, I was confident at that point we were going to hold on to him, he was going to be around. But whatever this bug was seemed to really fester and gain strength at night. And just in classic Minx fashion, and loyal to his dad to the end, literally, like I was to him. I mean, what a great friend. You have no idea. Little welled up a little bit thinking about how much he was a good friend. But in classic Pluto fashion, he lurched towards me to get out of his blanket at the last minute. And I didn't really realize that was it. And I put him on my lap, and he took a few last labored breaths, and I was so unwilling to really realize he was dead, I gave him mouth to mouth. And you know, he's just a limp cat, and I honestly didn't accept he was dead until, I mean, I'm checking, you know, and my imagination's running wild, and I'm looking at his rib cage to see if it's moving up and down, and I'm imagining there's movement, and you know, right after a body dies, there's settling and all that, and I'm somehow well, is what I did is I stuck my finger in his throat about that far and wiggled it, because he'd never let me do that if he was alive, and there was nothing there. That was it. But I'm really glad that I had the time and the intuition plays a strong part with a pet. I'm glad I had the intuition to take him outside, which was always, you know, like his favorite part of the house. Any outside activity we had. And the older he got, of course, the less he was capable of doing that. When I lived in Orlando, he had full run on my porch, had a big, nice porch in Orlando. And I went and bought some grass for him and made a little place so he could feel that. And a couple times I took him out to some cold springs where I knew there were no gators, and let him drink straight from the spring because he really loved water. So, and then the pictures that I'm sharing now are of when I took him, before I left Colorado. I took him to Red Rocks, and I took him out to the Rocky Mountain Arsenal National Wildlife Refuge to see the deer and the buffalo. He really liked the deer. He looked back at me and, you see that? But the buffalo, the smell or something. And then he did see him. He didn't like that. They're too big. It freaked him out. I don't blame him. You can imagine what that would be like not being in a car. I'm sure a temperamental animal like a bull with the size of a buffalo is probably not the best thing to be around. But this isn't about buffalo or bison. This is about Pluto the cat, and he was absolutely awesome. And I highly recommend a pet in your life if you do not have a pet. Maybe if you have children, you don't need a pet because that's kind of that parental urge, I think, as humans that we have. We do that kind of thing. Babies matter to us. Any baby you see that elicits that response in a normal human being. And some people are fucked 5 ways till Sunday and it doesn't matter, but it's just the way it is. But when Pluto came to us, he was a kitten and he was so small that the vet recommended we keep him in a box with little stuffed animals and a wind-up clock to simulate a heartbeat. And he really turned out to be the best pet I ever had. And even when I got divorced, Piper called me and said, you need to come get your son, because he went into depression when I had left. And he was being a brat and went out and got himself hurt, essentially to say, Dad, you better come get me. So that's what happened. And, you know, I mean, I definitely think if children, that's what happened. Children, I guess more like teenage girls, children, young kids brought him to us. And there's something about that, because children haven't learned to forget and discard intuition and the wonder of that life can be, because they're not so concerned about making a living and all that. And I strongly feel that when, ooh, look, a chrysalis. I strongly feel that when children bring an animal to you, that you need to take it. Because that spirit of that animal is something you might need in your life. So just take it and do that and enjoy your world. And be the kind of pet parent and be the kind of person that when that animal's gone, you have no regrets, because you know you did everything you could to bring joy to that animal's life, and that animal brought joy to your life. I don't know how many times I woke up with him purring right next to my head, and how many times I fell asleep with that little motor running on my pillow, and boy, that'll put you out real quick. That's a very comforting sound. And you know, I mean, I miss him. What am I going to do? So I strongly feel that if you do not have that capacity in your life, or that experience, that you're missing out on everything. You know, I love people, I love to interact with people, I love good conversation, I like to screw with people. I just like the whole social dynamic of life, and sales and art and film, and the whole thing. And you can have a complete life, just all that. But if you do not understand or get that experience of the love of a pet and that kind of psychic connection, poison oak. If you don't get that connection, I don't understand how you can have a whole full life and actually distrust people based on how they treat animals. I judge people based on how they treat animals. And that goes to hunters and fishermen and everything. There's a difference between a hunter that practices conservation and guys that are in it for their ego. Easy to tell. Big fucking spiders on these trails. So anyway, that's all I got. Wanted to honor the minks, staying vegan. That's not what this one's about. This one's about Pluto the cat, honoring him. And go get a pet, man. Go love a pet. I also, now that I'm saying this, let's go ahead and speak out against puppy mills and cat mills and just pet mills. Pluto came to us, brought to us. He would have been stray. He would have been given away. And when you go to a pound, you're going to want to leave with probably 3 or 4 animals because they're so wonderful. So that's all I have, and I really appreciate all the support and notes of condolence I've gotten about my cat, because I think those people understand how much, you know, a pet really can mean to somebody. 18.5 years, man, that's, you know, 1/4 of my life, 1/5 of my life. That's a long time to have another soul in your life traveling on your path. And he was a constant companion and a constant friend. And, you know, he was so smart. When he was a kitten, I told him to kill small animals and bring them to me. And I only had to tell him once. Thank you very much for your time.